Hello, everyone. My name is Abby Lone Wolf, and the topic that I chose for the EMS Skills Lab is how to apply a leg traction splint. Over the years, I have been on a handful of calls involving femur fractures. Most of them were falls, and most of them were nursing home residents, but there was the occasional car accident. A traction splint is a handy device to have on your squad. For this demonstration, I will be using a Fernotrack bipolar leg traction splint. It is a good idea to get familiar with the traction splint that you have available to you. So let's get started. While that looked pretty painful, he might have a femur fracture. So let's see what we could do about that. The lesson goal for today is, upon completion of this lesson, the student, which is you, will be able to demonstrate how to apply a leg traction splint. Some of the objectives are that the student will be able to list the indications, contraindications for applying the leg traction splint, also including signs and symptoms of a femur fracture. Demonstrate taking standard precautions, including a minimum of applying gloves, which we do on all of our calls. Demonstrate how to manually stabilize and apply manual traction of the injured leg. Assess circulatory, sensory, and motor function in the injured leg prior to applying the leg traction splint. Correctly measure and adjust the traction splint. Properly prepare the traction splint for use. Demonstrate how to secure the leg traction splint. Demonstrate how to correctly apply mechanical traction. And finally, reassess CSM in the injured leg after applying the traction splint. Some general information regarding the traction splint. The indications for applying a traction splint are a midshaft femur fracture. When you assess the patient, you'll notice an area in the mid-thigh that may be painful, swollen, or deformed. But the femur fracture that we splint, it will be mid-shaft. A reason why that the femur fractures are so painful are that the large muscle groups in the thigh are starting to spasm, which also cause the bones to override. And there are also blood vessels and nerves that may be getting damaged in this process. Contraindications for applying the leg traction splint are a pelvis, hip, or knee injury. You do not want to place the leg traction splint on a patient who has any of those injuries. It could cause further injury and excruciating pain. Also, an avulsion or partial amputation, applying traction can actually separate the extremity, and also an injury to the lower third of the leg that would interfere with applying the ankle hitch. So now we will go over applying the leg traction splint. And here are the steps. Of course, on all of our calls, be assigned scene safety, it's paramount. And then you'll manually stabilize the injured leg and apply manual traction. You can have your coworker do this or a capable bystander. And by capable, I mean a bystander who is not intoxicated, who can physically do this. Also somebody who's not in shock by what they just saw. But most of the time you'll have your coworker helping you out. And when you apply manual traction and when you stabilize the leg, you'll be putting the injured leg back in the position of anatomical function. You will assess circulatory, sensory, and motor function in the injured leg. A good rule of thumb that I like to remember is a lot of times when we assess the motor function in an injured extremity, we'll have the patient push up or push down on her hand. Well, with a femur fracture, this can actually cause a lot more pain for the patient. So I like to have them wiggle their toes to show me the state of their motor function. Then you'll adjust the splint to the proper length. You will be measuring on the non-injured leg to get a sense of what the size of their leg should be. And for this particular splint, it advises extending out the leg traction splint about 10 inches beyond the heel of the foot. Then you will apply the top strap, which is called the ischial securing device. And for reference, it is named after the ischial tuberosity. And there it is on both sides. Then you will apply the ankle hitch. And it doesn't show in this picture, but your partner will still be holding manual traction at this point. Then you will apply mechanical traction. And hopefully the patient will be feeling some relief shortly after this. Then you will secure the support straps and keep in mind to not cover up the actual site of the injury. And of course, you will mobilize above and below the injury. And then reassess CSM after you apply the leg traction splint. Very important. So now we're going to put it all together. Now please keep in mind with this demonstration video that this is basically showing you how to apply the leg traction splint. In this simulation, it is assumed that all other patient care is taken care of or is or will be. I won't actually be cutting off my coworker's pant leg, but just an idea of how to apply the leg traction splint. That's what this video is going to show.
I was putting decorations up and I fell over a ladder. Severe pain right here.
Okay.
Thigh area. Hurts like hell. Oh.
All right, sir. Can you wiggle your toes for me?
Yeah.
Can you feel me touching your toes?
Yes.
All right. Can you put this leg out for me?
Okay. Oh. Oh. Oh.
All right, sir. We're going to put you in a traction splint today.
Okay. Okay.
Have you ever had one of these on your leg before?
Yeah. Oh, never.
Never?
Never.
Okay. Well, it's going to put a little bit of traction on you. Line up those bones so
Okay.
they're not overriding each other anymore.
All right. I'm in a lot of pain though. I need something.
All right. So we're going to go up under the leg, okay? What were you doing today?
Getting my Halloween decorations up before Halloween's over. Ladder's old. Broke on me, I did something, I fell. Hurt my damn leg, it hurts like hell right now.
Okay.
That's why I called you guys.
We're going to pull mechanical traction out.
Oh, there. Oh,
Feel a little bit better?
yes, thank you.
Can you wiggle your toes for me? Can
Yeah.
you feel me touching your toes?
Yes.
And there it is. So today we went over a few indications and contraindications, signs and symptoms of femur fractures, and the reasons for applying the leg traction splint. Then we went over the steps and also showed you a demonstration video. So the leg traction splint can be a helpful piece of equipment when you respond to a midshaft femur fracture. Also keep in mind it is still a required item on ambulances in the state of Nebraska. So what I like to tell people is from time to time, make sure you blow the dust off of it and practice. Are there any questions? Thank you.